What's up, agents? Zer here, welcome back to lab, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the updates that I have made to version 3 of the lab. Now, the majority of these features that I decided to put into the lab are just simply for ease of access, so that there are a lot less things that you actually have to do yourself in order to actually use the lab properly. And before I go ahead and get started, two things that I want to go ahead and mention. Once this video uploads, I will be uploading version 3 of the lab to MCPDL very soon. So if you're watching this video immediately after it's being uploaded, it still will have version 2 of the lab. I will make sure to get upload very soon, so you guys don't have to worry about that. But also, something that you guys probably don't really care about as much, but I thought was a kind of nice touch, is that I actually ended up updating my lab skin. So if you take a close look, I actually legitimately have sleeves. I am actually wearing the coat instead of it actually being a part of my skin. I recently found out that apparently Bedrock Edition does support the extra layered skins that Java supports, which is kind of nice, all things considered. So there's a little bit of a tip for Bedrock Edition for you inside of this video. But anyway, you guys are obviously here because you want to see the updates to this version of the lab, and right off the bat you can probably already see some amount of changes, and that's obviously because of the amount of buttons that are actually inside of the lab itself, or at least for this part is the main lab. There are other buttons and features in other parts of the lab, and I will be getting to those eventually. But since we're here in the main lab, we're going to go ahead and start off here. And so, what exactly do these buttons do? Well, here is what happens. If you press a button above one of these test tubes, what it's going to do is completely open it up, which honestly I think is actually a really smart feature. Mainly this is my lab, so I realize that I'm kind of gloating about it being a smart feature, but I want to believe that you guys will agree with me. The reason why I made this is because if I'm showcasing like an update or an add-on that has a specific mob, I put them in these test tubes. That's actually the reason why I have them to begin with, and I'm always having to go ahead and break and replace blocks just to go ahead and put them in there. And this makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to get in and out, so no more breaking of blocks. And this does work for absolutely every single test tube, including the one for the larger test tube, which is very helpful, all things considered, because it's actually one block too high for me to go ahead and fly above with the actual cover on top of it. But without it, you can fly on in. So that's actually pretty helpful, all things considered. Next up, we have this button right here, and here's what this does. If I press this and look up at the fans, they stopped. So you can actually go ahead and toggle the fans on and off if you actually want to toggle the fans on and off. Personally, I like having the fans on because it adds a little bit of aesthetics to it, but for anyone who wants to download the lab, that is completely up to you. If you like the fans running, you're more than welcome to keep them running. If you want to turn them off, then you can go ahead and do so with that. But yeah, that's all the updates to the main lab. So let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to head upstairs to the testing room, and this has only a small amount of features added into it, but it's actually pretty cool, things considered. So first off, in the previous version of the lab, I did actually have this toggle water button. However, I did not actually have it labeled, and the reason why I actually labeled it is because I actually have another button over on the other side, which we're going to get to in just a moment. But if the title toggle water doesn't really say anything about it, what it does is if you press it, it's going to completely fill in the floor of the testing room with water. So maybe you want to showcase an underwater structure or some kind of mob, then you can go ahead and use that and do it. Again, that button was in the previous version of the lab, but some people may not have been aware about it. And also on this side, we actually have a toggle time button. So if I go ahead and get myself out a clock really quick and I press this toggle time button, as you can tell, it now says that it's nighttime, and it actually is technically nighttime. And then obviously if I press it again, it's going to take me back to daytime. So Yeah, pretty nice all things considered. It's actually a pretty smart feature because there are some mobs that if you wanted to be able to spawn them, but they do not exist at nighttime by any means, they just will not appear, this is probably the best way to go about setting it up. So next, let's go ahead and go across the hall, and we're going to head into the vehicle bay, and there's not really a whole heck of a lot of changes to the vehicle bay. The only change that I really have made between version 2 and version 3 of the actual lab is that I replaced the stone slabs with smooth stone. And the reason why I'm saying stone slabs instead of smooth stone slabs is because previously they were not known as smooth stone slabs. They were just stone slabs. I realize I'm saying that a whole heck of a lot of times, but hopefully you guys get the point simply because of the updates that came to the main game and not the lab. But let's go ahead and open up the garage door, and that part is actually not changed at all. It still works exactly as it's supposed to. But if we go ahead and come outside and fly around, as you can tell, there is absolutely no visible command block, which was not the case with the last version of the lab. I went ahead and buried them underneath the ground, so at the very least it makes it look a lot nicer when you're going outside. I also did end up removing the redstone blocks that were on top of these redstone lamps. I would actually set them to be powered without using any power source through commands, but I'm still trying to work that out, so this is the best alternative I've had at the moment. And also, if you guys look over here, you don't see absolutely anything, and you might be wondering, well, what's the whole point of that? Well, previously, what I had over here was 3 different sizes of obsidian blocks, and the reason for that is previously, if you were changing the size of the obsidian chamber, it actually used a clone command, and now it is actually using the fill command instead. So if you guys come outside and you look around and you look at the obsidian chamber, that is the only obsidian chamber you will now see, which is obviously the whole point. So I thought that was kind of nice. And last but not least, let's go ahead and go to the actual obsidian chamber itself. And we're not actually going to be going into the obsidian chamber. We're actually going to be looking at the settings for the obsidian chamber. And it's going to make sense once I explain it. So first off, we have these 3 buttons which have always been here. All they simply do is go ahead and change the size of the obsidian chamber, but now they are actually properly labeled. And on top of that, I also added in a little bit of a feature. So let me go ahead and open up the obsidian chamber door, which has not changed by any means. But what I did change is that if I go ahead and press one of these buttons, it is actually going to close the obsidian chamber door if I actually decide to change it, and it opens itself back up. If I were to close the door and do the exact same thing again, the door is gonna stay closed once it's done changing. I think that's actually kind of smart. And on top of that, I don't actually have anybody with me to go ahead and properly show this off, but I do want to go ahead and mention it. If you have another player who's with you in this world and they are inside of the obsidian chamber, when you decide to go ahead and change the size, then they will actually be teleported directly outside of the obsidian chamber before it actually starts changing, just to kind of help protect them. I realize more than likely they're going to be in creative mode, so they're not going to really be in too much trouble, but that's obviously beside the point. And last but not least, we have these 2 buttons right here. First off, toggle night vision. This one has been in the game before. This one does exactly as you expect. It simply toggles you having night vision. So if I go ahead and open up the obsidian chamber door really quick. So if I go ahead and come in here, as you can see, I can see wonderfully inside of the obsidian chamber. It mainly is the small version, but that's beside the point. So if I go ahead and press it again and get rid of the night vision, it actually does get dark. Pretty much the back of it. So that's actually a smart feature that, again, I have had in the lab for quite some time. And last but not least, toggle game mode. This is actually a brand new button, and as you probably expect with this, I am now actually in survival mode now, so I can actually go ahead and take damage from mobs inside of the obsidian chamber or do other things in survival. That's obviously the whole point. And if I press it again, as you expect, I switch back into creative. So That's pretty much all of the changes I have made to the lab. And again, I will be uploading version 3 of the lab to MCP Dale soon, so just be patient. But other than that, this is actually where I'm going to go ahead and end off the video. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed. If you did, make sure that like button. One more than make sure that subscribe button for future content. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at AgentCPU0 to stay updated. This is Zer0's. Thank you guys for watching, and with that, I'll see you guys later.